June 11th, 2019. Let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So first, we have the approval of the warrant.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
I'm going to have to read the rule of
Yes,
necessity.
thank you, please
because
do.
I don't believe Kristen is going to be here tonight. Since the immediate family members of two school committee members are teachers, the committee cannot reach a quorum to vote on tonight's warrant due to conflicts under the Conflicts of Interest Law. We've been advised by counsel to invoke the rule of necessity to allow us to vote on any matter involving the financial interests of such family members, and by this statement, I will invoking the rule. Detailed disclosures regarding the matter were made at the committee's April 11, 2006 meeting and recorded in the minutes, and are also on file with the town clerk and may be viewed in the town clerk's office. Thank you.
Any further comment on the warrant?
There was no motion made.
May we have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? And the chair votes aye. Okay, is there anyone here for public participation tonight who's not on the otherwise scheduled agenda? No. Thank you. Welcome to the group who just came. Next we have, are there any subcommittee reports? Mr. Murphy.
One thing from the rec department, we had a meeting last night, and they started a program last summer on regarding field maintenance, and they started it with the field at Wildwood School in Simons Park, and they're expanding it to Rohannes this year. But for years, or for a number of years anyway, they'd been using only organic fertilizers, and they didn't work. So they started last year with a program through a company called Tom Irwin. They assigned a consultant, and they started using some sort of non-organic fertilizer.
Wonderful.
And and it's worked very nicely.
Funny thing about those chemicals.
They had a different word than chemicals, I forget what they said. Synthetic fertilizer. It's a synthetic fertilizer. So in any event, they wanted to, we have an organic fertilizer policy on school property. Mm-hmm. So they would like to start a conversation with the school department or in the school committee to discuss expanding this synthetic fertilizer program to the two schools there's three schools actually with heavily used fields. The middle school, Francis Wyman School, and Memorial School all have soccer and other general use fields at them. So I told him I'd bring it up. I'm happy to serve on the subcommittee. If one additional member of the school committee would like to serve on that, that's fine. But they would kind of like to set up a meeting with Bob and Eric and whoever else from the schools wants to be involved to discuss it. They looked into it before doing this, and obviously it's being used currently on playing fields in Burlington that aren't related to the schools. So from a concern about the synthetic nature of the fertilizers, they've looked into that and they were satisfied. So in any event, I told them I'd bring it to the committee's attention, and like I said, if anybody wants to volunteer to sit on the subcommittee with me, I'll get that word back to Brendan and we'll set something up.
Okay. Mrs. Monaco?
If organic fertilizers aren't working, it's because they're not using them right. So I think you probably don't want me on that subcommittee because
That's
I am
correct.
totally opposed to leaving organic fertilizers to go
So
to chemicals.
Why don't you stay off the
I
subcommittee
will.
then, and then we'll,
I will not volunteer.
okay, excellent.
I'll volunteer, Madam Chair, if
yeah.
there's no one else interested.
Well, I'm not sure that makes sense, to leave people off who have a different perspective.
Well, I do.
And I also would be willing and be interested, I'd want to ask them, what does it mean it didn't work? And, what do you know about the chemicals that you're proposing to use? And maybe they have a perfectly good answer, but I would be interested in doing that as well. I don't think we need 3 people on the committee.
You can't have
Right.
We can only have 2.
Were you particularly strongly in favor, wanting to be on that subcommittee, or would it make sense for someone who wanted to ask a lot more questions?
I don't want to
Well,
do
I'm
it.
gonna ask
I'm
questions.
No, not
just
you.
getting a
Don't
battle.
worry about that.
Yeah, what's that?
I said, you can be assured I'm gonna ask questions, but
Uh-huh.
I'll defer to you, you're the chairman.
Again, my
It's a
suggestion,
subcommittee.
Madam Chair, would be, I think any decision would obviously have to come back to the full committee, so.
Right,
Yeah, this is an informational gathering thing, and obviously whoever goes will get whatever information is pertinent, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, yes.
I think Steve will adequately ask the questions, but make sure you remember what I said. If it's not working, they're not
I've been
using
an
it
advocate my
right.
whole life, Chris, I'll remember.
Okay, well, would you
up to
like to
you.
do it then?
I would like to do it.
Okay,
Please.
all right, and maybe I can let you know, the questions I would want to ask is, what do you mean it didn't work? What does that mean? That there's some dandelions? I don't know what that means. I
Well-
know that some of the fields get a lot of wear and tear, and that's difficult. And then I'd want to know more about why they feel assured about the synthetic fertilizers that they decided to use. So you may have already heard those answers, I don't know. Did you want to say
There
something
was a
else?
discussion back when they went to that program last year, that, they researched it, looked into it. And there clearly has been an improvement in the condition of the fields that are currently using it. I can tell you that, and visually, I obviously haven't taken soil samples, but visually, it's working better. So.
Okay, so
And
it
that's,
sounds,
and just as a side note, that's one of the biggest complaints as a recreation commissioner that we seem to get is condition of the fields, because frequently on a Saturday morning, there's a whole bunch of parents standing around watching their children play soccer, and, if last week the game was in Woburn and they played in some beautiful field, and this week's it's back in Burlington, and it looks like an abandoned lot, then you get the complaints and you get the comments, so. So the rec commission made a point about 2 years ago to start looking into ways to make it better. And they teamed up with this company, Tom Irwin, and they were assigned a rep or somebody who came out and kind of, he's the consultant for this, so. So it works in terms of quality of the field. I'm not a scientist, so I can't really speak to the other stuff.
I'm aware, I've had my children playing on fields that look, pretty wrecked, but I would like to be sure that we get that information before we make a decision about the fields that are under our purview, so.
Sure.
So Mr. Murphy and Mr. Nelson will be on that subcommittee, okay?
Thank you.
All right,
Madam Chair, just, I was wondering if, I think it might have been after our last meeting or prior to, I'm not exactly sure the date, but there was the Selectmen Subcommittee, Ms. Monaco and Mr. Murphy met with Mr. Tigas and Paul Sagarino regarding really the long-term debt schedule and some of the other things that we were talking about in regards to building. It was a very preliminary meeting, but just basically starting with what are the sort of facts around how much money has been set aside in the debt schedule and how people were viewing that money. So I'm not sure if that would be just a brief summary, so.
Yeah, I think the important things are, we definitely have a slot in the schedule. The question becomes is whether or not we get MSBA assistance, and if not, is our slot in the schedule large enough to cover the cost of an entire project? So that's going to be something we're going to have to continue to talk to them about, but, they had they had penciled in an amount for roughly what we assumed our share of the high school project would be. And that money is there and is available through the bond schedule.
Excuse me.
But, you know, if we don't get MSBA funding and we try to move it up and do it all in our dime, then we might have to get creative or do it in phases or something like that. And that's not even getting into the elementary situation, so. So it's going to be an ongoing discussion, as it usually is with those type of things.
Okay. I guess I would like to just have a conversation, you know, going forward at each of our meetings about all the issues involved with not just funding, but choices that we need to be making and decisions we need to be making about going forward. Whether or not we get the high school renovation approved by the MSBA. We have agreed that we won't put in another request with MSBA for that. We would move into a request for an elementary project of some sort. But we need, I think, a lot of time to talk about what are the various options, what would they cost, what are the educational advantages and that kind of thing. So I'm hoping starting at the next meeting, we can have that as an ongoing agenda item. But this is a good update to have, so thank you. Any other comments on that?
No, so again, Sharon, we'll make that a standing agenda item for elementary space, I guess, is what we would want to discuss. Bob, the warrant that we have is for the examination and design of the HVAC system in this building. So we'll have a better idea, after that work is done, the scope of just replacing the HVAC system, is that correct?
Yes.
So if we don't get the MSBA support for the renovation, we'll have a better idea of what the cost would be just to replace the heating and cooling systems of this building, and then have to talk about the elementary projects moving forward sort of pretty quickly. I think what the town said is there's a spot in money available, but the cycle, we can't go sort of back to back. The cycle would then have to start again, so there'd be some time before, in the debt schedule where, for instance, if we spend a significant amount of money on this building, where there would be a spot available for us to then have money available for a new school. So I think the timing of the expense is important, and then whether the HVAC system triggers bringing the entire building up to new building codes, because that would be hugely expensive as well. So I think the number that the town said was in their debt schedule was around $40 million, and that's, again, very rough. That was based on essentially a renovation of this building being in the sort of $80 million range, if we in fact got 50% reimbursement for the project. Again, if we don't have the project, it could be $25 million just to replace the HVAC system, and then, you know, I'm just guessing at all that other stuff, so. So it's, what was this building, 360,000 square feet? So there's no small project when it comes to.
Every time we have these discussions, and we point out that we're trying to get a lot more life out of this building for 80 million is a lot of money, but I saw in the paper, I think yesterday, that Arlington, there was going to be a vote over there for either a debt exclusion or a Prop 2.5 override for a $270 million high school. So, you know, when you put it in that perspective, and that's what they're all going for now, they're all north of 200 million. You know, we're trying to essentially get another 50 or 60 years out of this building for 1/3 of that.
Mark, what's Belmont at now?
More than Arlington,
Really? Crazy.
Really?
yes.
Right around 300 million?
They haven't even broken ground, they're already 20 million over budget.
Oh, my.
So,
Crazy.
so the numbers are big.
Yeah. So, I mean, we know that it's a lot of money, with or without the MSBA support, but we also know that, you know, if the boilers die at the high school, we still have to rent boilers, and it's going to cost us a lot of money. And there are all the educational and air quality issues that we've talked about before. So I'm hoping that things will go favorably, but I think we need to be having these conversations about the cost.
So, Madam Chair, it'll be a standing agenda item.
Great, okay, and also just to clarify, the standing agenda item, we are moving forward with the study for the high school
Uh-huh.
HVAC, but the standing agenda item, I believe, needs to be a discussion about where we're gonna go with the elementary buildings and elementary education. So, because there have been many ideas that have been put
Yeah.
out, and I've heard this and I've heard that, but we need to be thinking about it and talking about it and making sure that we're comfortable moving forward with whatever program we feel needs to happen.
Yep.
Okay? All right. Are there other subcommittee reports? Mr. Nelson?
It's not really, excuse me, Madam Chair, not really a subcommittee report, but I did want to ask for a moment of silence. The town of Burlington lost a longstanding employee by the name of Richard Reed. He worked for the cemetery division for many years. Talented guy. He worked his way up into the DPW. I think he was the second in command over the DPW behind Mr. Sanchez in terms of buildings and maintenance. I've known him myself for probably 30 years, and you'd never meet a nicer guy. And so my thoughts and prayers and condolences go out to his family, and if we could just have a brief moment of silence, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for mentioning all that. So, does Ways and Means have any report tonight? No? Okay. All right. We'll get to more financial business later. And so we'll move into instruction and technology.
Thank you, Madam
Conti?
Chair. Very excited tonight to have Burlington High School featured in some of the programs that again, have, I think, been very successful. So with that, I'd ask Mr. Sullivan to show up. Mr. Sullivan, thank you very much. And basically, you're going to handle the agenda.
Sure you want that. So I'll just start off. Last Sunday, or 2 Sundays ago, we had our high school graduation. It was a great day. Mrs. Russo filled in for Miss Simon. They swap-swapped from previous years. We lucked out, the weather cooperated. We had 249 graduates. It was a great day. And then last week, we also celebrated our Evening Academy graduation. Miss Graham is back there. She's the director.
Principal Graham.
Principal Graham, right. She got the new title last week. That's right. Congratulations.
Yes?
They had 5 graduates, and the Simon Youth, once again, very generously awarded one of the graduates an $8,000 scholarship to continue his education. So, and then we had our book awards last Thursday. So a nice year-end celebrations for our students, both the ones that were graduating and about 45 or so kids that received book awards last Thursday morning. So nice way to start the wrap-up of the year.
Mark, is the King's venue still being used?
Yeah, for the all-night party, so they go from 10 o'clock to 5 a.m. Mr. Sheehan and I were there this year, and the parent volunteers do a great job. They have casino games, they have a hypnotist that comes in, obviously they have the full use of the King's facility, the bowling, the arcade, the pool areas, and then they bring in the tarot card readers, all the stuff that they used to do up here at the cafeteria. They just don't have to do all the decorating, which I think saved the volunteers a lot of time. But the King's is great. They generously donate the space. There's food that comes in all night, and the kids always have a really good time.
Well, we certainly want to thank the King's Bowling people for all of their support, and also I want to thank all the volunteers, because it takes a lot of people to make that all-night graduation party happen. So I want to thank everybody for that. Okay. So.
No, it was great. Graduation was great, so thank you. It was fun to participate. It's a somber yet celebratory event, so appreciate it. So you can take us down through some other activities?
Sure. So yeah, it's nice. We have several staff and students that are here behind me. There's always a lot going on at the high school. So I'd be remiss if I didn't say everyone does a great job, and we have lots of students that are involved in extracurricular activities and staff members that volunteer their time as advisors for a lot of different activities. We obviously can't highlight everything all the time, but we have a few staff and students here. They're going to highlight some of the activities and programs that they've been working on for you. The first is Mrs. Crossman and Ms. Chang, who for the last several years have worked with students in the high school for the Tenacity Challenge. It's an annual academic scholarship for teams of Latino and African American students from local high schools. We had our most ever participants this year, 5 teams, and I'll stop there and ask them to please come up, and I think they could probably do a better job explaining their preparation, and the students can do a good job explaining how the day went and what their experience was like.
Thank you all for coming tonight. And when you speak, if you could all say your names, because we want to know who all these special people are.
Thank you, Mark, for introducing us. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to come again and talk about the Tenacity Challenge and how much it means to the students. And it's a pleasure for Judy and I certainly to have the chance to brag about these students and all of the hard work that they did above and beyond with their school day and their sporting events or extracurricular jobs and activities. They elect to do this, and we had the largest group that we've ever taken, and it was the largest group of the whole Tenacity Challenge. So that was very impressive that Burlington was really so represented. So I want to make sure to thank all of you for supporting it and watching it grow and develop over all these years. The kids are going to talk and introduce themselves, and then I think Ida's going to talk even about what it kind of meant to her. So I'll hand it over to them.
Great.
My name is Ida Gachago, and I'm in my junior year.
Oh, okay. I'm Cheyenne Watson. I'm a sophomore. I'm Zara Muhammad, and I'm a junior. I'm Charity Valdez, and I'm a freshman.
I'm Nadia Kasozi, and I'm a sophomore.
My name's Genevieve Kuganza, and I'm a sophomore.
Speeches on the cell phones.
Oh, yeah. So Tenacity meant a lot to all of us because it was a way for us to dive deeper into issues that are often overlooked or like brushed off. And this year's theme was if hip hop was a positive or a negative influence on society. And I really like the topics that they choose every year because it's always something that we see every day but never really talk about. And I really appreciated seeing like all the other schools and all their ideas and different opinions. And it was really nice to see everything all come together after months of hard work.
Yes. Good. Someone else want to speak about their experience?
I guess I'll speak about it. I don't have any notes like her, but I can very much say it is a very moving experience. It gives all of us a sense of community and more of a family and friendship that it creates bonds within the club too. We also connect with other schools in the final thing, and it creates even more bonds and friendships. So it's honestly like this big thing where we can all just feel like we can be ourselves because we're with others that are just like us. And yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Now, are you all on the same team, or there are 5 teams, right?
Yeah,
So
there were separate teams.
is it by grade? Is it by question?
You can pick your teams no matter what grade. Create them by yourself.
And are there different parts of the challenge?
Yeah, there's like a math,
Oh, yeah.
part, an art part, where you draw like a
was like science part 2. It was math and science, which was like you go there and like it was like
They quiz you. Yeah.
you, while like the other ones like you have like 5 months to like prepare for.
Uh-huh. So it makes sense that the teams all have different strengths, that all the participants have different strengths?
Yeah.
Did you have a favorite part of the challenge?
My favorite part was the history. It was very fun to present and speak.
I think someone else wants to speak when you're done. But when she's done.
But yeah, the history, it was very fun to me. I was able to like speak passionately about the topic.
That's excellent.
And what else would you like to say?
I enjoyed the dancing.
So there's performance in this as well. Yes, great.
I enjoyed the math and quiz bowl because I like getting things right.
Okay.
Every time you got something right, there was like a
math
big
quiz bowl
green
was, like,
sign.
really, like, you get to work together, like, figure out the answer, and then once you do, like, get the right answer, you feel so great, like.
Yeah,
you
they
feel
hold
so
up this big
happy.
green sign. It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Well, again, Ms. Chang, Ms. Crossman, I know you, thank you so much. I know it takes a lot of time, and the representatives of the team here did a lot of work outside of their regular classes, right? This is in addition to their regular work, which is phenomenal. I also know that you had some other folks working with them as well, because I think I observed that. So I think you brought some folks in too, right? So there was a great opportunity for them to even expand some of their adult mentors that they work with, right?
Yes, part of the challenge is that they have to do a lot of research and they have to have primary sources. So because their topic was around hip-hop and spoken word, we brought in guest speakers. So we brought in Reggie Gibson and we brought in Austin Ash, who's an MIT Associate of Student Affairs, who's getting his doctorate in hip-hop. So the kids got to meet these role models and spend time with them and have this day kind of workshop with them, really learning from them, which is really special.
Now, I spoke to someone who chose not to be on the Tenacity Challenge, and he said, it's a lot of work, on top of everything else you do. So what I'm hearing from you folks is that it was worth it to do that. But is it right, it was a whole lot of work to do on top of all your schoolwork? It's very impressive. Yeah. Any other comments, Ms. Crossman, Mrs. Chang, or the students?
We're just so proud of them, and we want to make sure that they all know that they're going to become the future leaders. So I love bringing them to the school committee and saying to them at the end, this could be you sitting on the other side of the desks. You can have leadership roles someday, and this is where you are headed, because you've all demonstrated such wonderful, wonderful skills in speaking and your literature and writing and performing. So I'm really proud of them.
The only thing I would add, and like Ms. Chang, I'm really proud of all these students and the hard work that they've done, and their enthusiasm is inspiring. It's a lot of fun to see them enthusiastic about school-related topics. I did happen to run into Mrs. Purchase yesterday, and I mentioned that there is a middle school. And I suggested maybe she look into it. I know she's got a lot on her plate, but I'm guessing our students would love to go down and talk to middle school students who might be interested and get them enthusiastic as well.
Yeah, if you have the robotics team and a bunch of that, that'd be perfect.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Can we grab a picture of you
Yeah.
guys?
You want to stand up? Should I stand up?
Right on.
Oh, can I sit down?
Mark's
Can I
backing
sit
up.
down?
Please? It's all right.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to say anything before you folks leave? I think we're all just really proud of you and really glad that you enjoyed it as well. Okay, thank you. All right.
So moving along, the next group is our high school environmental club, and they're going to be presenting a district-wide environmental policy to you with their advisors, Ms. Graham and Mrs. Diozzi.
So Mrs. Monaco, you had read a letter, I think,
Yes.
at the last meeting, and we had scheduled a group to come in anyway, so I thought the timing was very good. I think that many of you saw Staven and Ricky present to town meeting a couple times, so I certainly said this would be a venue that would be a little bit different than town meeting for them to present to, so, it's really something to want to improve the community in which one lives, and I think it's a lesson that we try to have all of our students possess and to emulate, and these guys are doing it already. So when we said, you know, they're trying to make their backyards better, and they've been sharing a lot of their ideas again with town meeting, and I think in speaking with the students last week, they just really wanted to talk about, in terms of our organization and their school community, are there things that we can do here locally? So thanks for coming out, and your advisors, I think, are...
We're gonna let them pick the shoe.
All right.
Thank you, Dr. Conti. Good evening. Thank you for having us and allowing us to speak during this meeting. My name is Ricky Vidham. This is Nala Sotathil, and this is Stevan Shah. So throughout the past years, we have seen many other school districts pass environmental policies, and we feel it's necessary to be able to follow in their footsteps and promote a better, greener Burlington. So if it's okay, we would like to begin this presentation with a video that gives a good overview of the impacts of climate change. Oh, yeah.
Keeps getting smaller.
This is not it.
Good one.
You're good.
One day, we will wake up to find that the energy that powers the alarm clock came from the breeze through the trees the night before. And we will go to work that morning riding the rays of the sun. It will light our cities and power our businesses. It will warm our homes and cool our workplaces. It will reduce sources of conflict and fuel our economies. It will connect us all. It won't scar the land or poison the seas. The food we eat will be good for our bodies and good for the planet. And the weather that day won't make us worry for tomorrow. There will be more jobs and less disease.
Whoever this is running for president.
The sea level will stop rising. And species will stop dying. The question is, how do we get to that day from where we are today? All 7.3 billion of us.
Because this wasn't the right night to bring up the synthetic fruit.
That's really a bad idea.
We start by deciding that beyond our doubts and differences, such a day truly exists. And that is something each of us can do today. We can make today the day we stop thinking that the changes required to get there are impossible and beyond us, and start realizing that they are not only possible, but what the future requires of us. We must stop turning from the warnings of science and fear and denial, and instead turn toward the solutions and partnerships we need. We can make today the day we stop pointing at each other in blame, and instead chart a new course together. We have never faced a crisis this big, but we have never had a better opportunity to solve it. We have everything we need to wake up to a different kind of world. We need our leaders to be brave and their choices to be bold.
All right. So we saw in that video some of the things that can happen with climate change. One of them that was mentioned was the rising sea levels. And this is going to be happening more locally, especially in Boston. So here we have a map of the water levels in the future during high tide in Boston. As we can see, the blue marks within the land, that's where the water is going to be during high tide in Boston. And even though it says 5 feet, 5 feet is a lot. It's going to damage Boston and the surrounding communities pretty hard. So with all this, it seems like us as a small town, Burlington, we really can't do much to stop this. But what we believe is that if we take initiative and if we promote an environmental policy and others do as well, then we can start to collectively help aid and reduce the impacts of climate change. So now I'd like to hand it over to Stefan, who will be presenting some other things.
Thank you, Ricky, for that. So Ricky mentioned the why we all need to be more environmentally conscious as citizens of this great country and of this town. But as he mentioned, we should start at our school districts. And that's crucial because starting at our schools sets a prime example for its own students and the town members residing within it, while concurrently also allowing for a greener, brighter, more environmentally conscious future for other Burlington High School students to come, walk through the doors of Memorial, MSMS, BHS, get to have the same experiences as we do, but in a more greener future, which should be better than the years before. And we owe it to them, truly. But we can't shut a blind eye to what's already been done. Burlington has been working to make this town very green. We have Memorial School, we have Burlington High School with its solar panels, we have Brita filters, which have reusable water bottles and their benefits. We have a lot of recycling happening, and we even have an idling law posted outside our school, where the circles and the cars come to drop off their students. But I just mentioned the idling law. The disappointing thing is that there is now a sign posted about idling, but even as I'm walking out the main entrance going into the student parking lot, every single car out there without a student in there, it's been just idling. And I know that, not to be mean to my own mother, but I know that she has she has also been a few of the people who have committed such acts. And we can also increase more Brita filters to our schools, and of course, add more solar panels because they're cleaner, more efficient energy. And now I'm going to pass it over to Naz.
So as we sit here today, it's not just us who is in favor of this green policy. So we sent out a survey a couple days ago asking whether people would be in favor of this green policy in the Burlington Public Schools. And we've gotten over 206 students so far. There's still more incoming. And here are some of the signatures that we've gotten from people. It's only been a few days, but even just 206 students, that's about the size of just our junior class, and we're still getting more. So thank you for your time, and we'd love to answer any of your questions.
Who's first?
So would you like to start? Sure.
Yeah, I want to congratulate you for all of your hard work and for an excellent presentation. I think that this is one of the pressing issues facing not only the country, but as you say, the whole planet, the whole world, is to protect the planet and come up with a good environmental policy that all of the countries can follow to reduce pollution. You had a slide up there with different recommendations. Have you turned that into a type of a policy that you would want to be adopted?
Right now, those are just a few of the recommendations we have. We have yet to draft a full paper policy ourselves to list exactly the steps we need to take to become a greener school. Obviously, right now, we're just students and juniors. All three of us are juniors at Burlington High School, so we may not know exactly every single option we have at our expense. So we were hoping that by coming here today, we'd be able to be set up a process of drafting a newer environmental policy.
So again, through the chair,
Yes, Dr. Conti.
Ms. Nelson, there are some districts that have some policies that we can look at. If the school committee is so inclined to look at a policy, we could certainly present some draft policy language. We can work with the students to do that.
It's a great idea.
If the committee so chooses.
I would certainly be in favor of that.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Monaco?
I'd like to thank you for your presentation as well. I think, I know one of the women in town that I know left a note for me at the last meeting asking that we begin to do some of these things, especially, she mentioned paper straws, which is, it's a good thing to do, to go from plastic to paper. I personally think that plastic should not be in our food. I don't like to buy things wrapped in plastic, and everything that practically that you buy is in plastic, but we have a long way to go with this. So I think I would like to ask, Sharon, do you have this list? Maybe you could share that list with us. And maybe we could begin to think about, it might be more than one policy. There might be a policy for the cafeteria, for instance, and there would have to be, we'd have to look into what's available, what we can do. There are all kinds of rules that we have to follow, but I think it's great. I'm terribly concerned about the future and the environmental mess that, we're staring at if we don't start to fix things. So I commend you for coming forward with these ideas, and hopefully we can begin to work on them. Thank you.
Yes.
And
Mr.
just,
Murphy?
also, thank you for coming in the time. In looking at your list, some of them are practical, day-to-day type of policies that we can enact. Some of them are more philosophical, big-picture type of policies that obviously we're, we can control what we can control in Burlington, but some of them are bigger things. But we can certainly look at them. What I just wanted to comment on mainly was this, to compliment you and your teachers, and principal, much like the group that just came before you. I just get a kick out of seeing the students getting involved in these types of things, and it's, I think it's important from an educational standpoint. I think it's, it shows that you're being taught properly, and the right things are being instilled in you to make you care about things like this. And I think that's important, whether it's about an environmental thing, whether it's about the Tenacity Challenge, where you're going to a statewide convention, essentially, and being able to communicate with other people of your peers, because, as Mrs. Chang said earlier, in a few short years, you guys are going to be in charge. And it's good to have the a background to be able to do that, have an interest to be able to do that, have the gumption to be able to come up and do something like this and continue to do it. So I think this is a great idea, and things that we'll certainly pursue, but I'm more impressed by the fact that you're just here doing it, just like the students from the Tenacity Challenge, and I know we have another group coming up after you. So I just congratulate you for being involved and being willing to do this. It's very important, and it's great to see the maturity level to understand that this is important, whether you're 16 or whether you're 26 or 56. And so, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I just really admire the work that you folks have put into this, the thought you've put into it, taking the time. I know, Ricky and Stavin, you spent a lot of time helping to pass the plastic bag ban in town, and I think that these could be really good places to start. And if, Dr. Conti, it sounds like everybody thinks this is a great idea. So hopefully we can look at some policies that other districts have. I have some ideas because I know, I mean, there's individual items there, but some are about reducing our carbon footprint and reducing our energy use, and other ones are about polluting the environment, and others are about recycling or plastic use. And as you know, the state is in the process of, there are a number of legislators who are trying to pass a statewide plastic bag ban, but after that movement sort of got going, people realized, well, there's plastic straws, and there's plastic, you know, utensils, and there's all these other single-use plastics that we have. Some of these kinds of things cost a lot of money. Getting, you know, reduced energy boilers or something probably cost more than getting the traditional ones that we have. But there are things that are less expensive, and, you know, getting a Brita, what do we call them, a water bottle filler. I mean, I'd love to see those replace every single fountain in the school district, so that every child who chose to bring a water bottle could get it refilled. And I think that's the kind of thing we'd like to do. Those things do cost money. But there are other things that don't cost a lot of money if we wanted to try to get more bicycle racks so kids could ride their bikes more, and maybe not have so many cars idling, and maybe, you know, seeing if the community wants to enforce the idling laws and looking at ways to move forward. I've talked with people in other towns who, many towns have a group of people in town that are really focused on making their town greener. And there are many things that our town is now starting to do. But those, in other towns, often it's the town side that's pushing the schools. And I think in Burlington, if we move forward with these kinds of things, we maybe can push the town to work together on all of these things, because certainly the schools can't do many of these things alone. But I'm really delighted that you brought this to us and that we can move forward with it. And I'm excited to try to do this. So I want to thank you folks, because I know you spent a lot of time. I also want to thank Ms. Graham, and I want to thank Ms. Diozzi, because I know you've worked with the Environmental Club for several years, right? And have helped students. I think I remember last September there was a No Styrofoam Trays Month, or No Styrofoam Cups from Dunkin' Donuts, right? And, you know, those are the kinds of things that we could look into. How much would it cost for us to replace the styrofoam trays? And, you know, some of those things will cost money, and we'd have to make decisions about how to do that as a committee. But I'm just really glad that this is in the conversation and that we can move forward. And I hope that if we do move forward, that we'll be able to get your participation also going forward, because you may have ideas that we wouldn't think of, or Dr. Conti and Mr. Cuna might not think of. So, yes, Dr. Conti, would you like to say anything else?
Madam Chair, I think a lot of these things tie together with other work that we're doing. So the cafeteria and the lunch ideas are great. The challenge that we have, and I think why we need sort of, honestly, getting back to our accurate monthly reporting, is when we've priced out compostable trays and utensils, they tend to be 10 times as much in terms of the cost. So expecting the cafeteria to break even and implement some of these things, or asking them to carry that cost, I think is unfair. So it might be something that we have to carry in the operating budget if we want to supplement some of those costs, and maybe we start pieces at a time. So what we might come to you and ask is, if you could pick one, is it the trays that you think, you know, leave the biggest footprint, and then we would try to attack, you know, one item at a time. And then as we make changes, I do want to commend the committee. You may not know this, but when the building committee was put together for the memorial school, one of the guiding principles they had was environmental awareness or friendliness. So, and not having, you know, not in the construction trades, but having built a few schools, a large expense at the memorial school, if you all remember, was the white roof, was because it was a light reflecting roof. It was much less expensive to put just a black rubber membrane roof up. And so I think they made you all made the choice to go with the more expensive roof and save money over time. The gray water flushing the toilets and the gray water for some of the other things that requiring cisterns built in the school required money, but in the long run, that saved money, and I think was the smarter thing to do. The No Meat Mondays, I think a group of principals just visited the Islamic Center, and I think one of the things the imam mentioned is just making sure that we always have a vegetarian option for students in our schools, which we, again, tend to accomplish through pizza, but it might make sense for us to explore some other options as well. So I'm saying, I think the more we can look for twofers, where we can sort of align other priorities that we have with, I think, smart environmental decisions make sense. And Bob, as you make decisions or things happen, it would be great to pass on that information to Jill, Stephanie, or even the club. So again, it might sound trivial, but this is a large building. Didn't you just replace all the fluorescent bulbs with, like, how many cases of bulbs? Just, I mean, it's just crazy to think about bulbs. So.
Well, we haven't replaced them yet because there are so many, but we did just receive a shipment 3 weeks ago for 10,000 4-foot LED bulbs. We've already installed about 2,600 of them in 2 buildings so far. We are expecting a shipment of about 1,900 more bulbs, which are going to be 2-foot, 3-foot, and then 1,600 watt convertible, again, all LED bulbs. So that should be coming in the next 2 days or so as well, too. So again, we'll be replacing approximately 12,000 LED bulbs, hopefully within the next 2 months or so.
Maybe some summer work? What do you think, you three? You wanna?
What's the pay?
How many Burlington High School juniors does it take to change 12,000 light bulbs?
Yes.
Is there a joke in
Yes.
there?
Good
There's a
question.
joke in there, but, so we are looking at things all the time, and so when you create your list as to what we're looking at, it is a priority, and you can add some of those things that we're trying to do as well, because you're probably bumping into more of some of those ideas too, and then we'd love to hear them, so I think that would be great. So.
Yeah, we didn't get a chance to read through every single thing that you had included, such as the things that have been done already. And Mr. Cuna, I think, has a number of other initiatives that he's done, like this, replacing LED with LED bulbs. This was an opportunity, he told me last week, this was an opportunity where they were given to us, right? So in the past, we've had to kind of make a cost-benefit, issue, just like with styrofoam trays and things like that. How much will it cost? In this case, we were given a donation. So he's always looking for these opportunities, and I'm really delighted. I also want to mention, we had a group of Girl Scout students who came last year, maybe last fall, and they were from Pine Glen, and they had ideas. They wanted to get solar panels on their school, and they wanted to, develop more environmentally friendly ways to help their school, reduce the carbon footprint as well. So I think we got a lot of people with a lot of good ideas, and I'm encouraged that we can move forward with this.
So, again, through the chair, we'll prepare some policy language and with maybe some guidance from the kids for you all to look at.
Okay. We're good. All right. Any other questions? Thank you so much for coming and presenting and for doing all this work. Really appreciate it.
And we'll keep you in mind for the light bulb job.
All right. Thank you so much, yeah. So I think, Mr. Sullivan, you have other wonderful things to tell us about going on at the high school.
Yes, so the next group is Ms. Tyrell, Mrs. Lamprey, and Mr. Wong.
Okay.
You all want to come up. So a group of staff members has not trickled down to students yet, but have worked very hard over the last several months to secure a grant for the high school, the Future Innovators Pathway grant. It's from the Department of Ed, and its intention is to help launch high-quality college and career pathways at the high school level. And I will let Ms. Tyrell.
I think you did a good job. job, you have it covered. The rest.
Well, I hope there's more.
That's it. That's the. I know, I wish we had brought students, because we actually have been working with a lot of wonderful students. But we'll give you the adult version, we'll keep it brief, and maybe you can have us back sometime with the kids and be entertained. So.
Do you want to sit in your, or you want to pass her the mic?
Do you want to come over here?
Oh, yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
And then,
We can get another mic for
oh
the
yeah, is it, should be working.
I'll put 2 chairs up there. Yeah, another mic would be good.
Do I have to mirror it?
I have faith that our computer staff
I know.
will be able to solve this problem.
He's under pressure now.
Yeah.
Well,
Reminds me of Eric's interview.
Tip it upside down. Something wouldn't work, I don't even remember. Something he brought.
You guys want to sit up here? So I'm Ms. Tyrell, and I teach computer science, and I have Mr. Wang, who's tech integration and also personalized learning, and Ms. Lamprey, who's the curriculum coach, and does a lot of work with the ELL students. So I am going to try to keep this brief, and I do have a handout for you afterwards, and I do hope we can bring students next time.
you're a good teacher, you know if you hand us the handouts, we won't pay attention to what you're talking about, right?
All right, so first, the problem that we're trying to solve. So here in Burlington, we know there are a lot of tech companies, and nationally, there's a lot of jobs that are just not filled, which is kind of hard to believe because the pay for computer science jobs is higher than other jobs in general. So it affects us because we're a high school, we're a whole school district, but in particular with the high school, because if we expose students to computer science, they're more likely to study it in college if that's their inclination. So I attended graduation. It was wonderful to see all the students, and a huge group of students, and actually a huge group of students here tonight. But when we look at what's happening currently in Burlington, despite wonderful teachers and a great program of studies, the numbers taking computer science, advanced placement, CSA, and computer science principles is really small. We have amazing students, but this is the group of seniors who took AP computer science, and not the best picture of them. They're a dynamic, wonderful group, outstanding leaders, but again, the numbers are really small. And what struck me here today, actually, was seeing the students in the Tenacity Challenge and also with the environmental group, and I haven't had any of those students in computer science. So really, our problem to solve is how do we introduce more kids to this field? So the state actually has helped to be a catalyst for the solution. They are offering a grant. It's part of this high-quality college and career pathway program. And essentially, to boil it all down, the idea is to create a vocational pathway within an academic setting. So in other words, our students are taking the academically challenging courses, but they're also thinking about college and career really in a pathway that will direct them to a particular outcome. The state initiative supports this work in several different areas, and right now we're choosing information, computer science, but there's other areas that we can focus on in the future. The important part about this is that the idea is to get all students exposed to computer science and to broaden the numbers of students who have access. And that's why we've been working a lot with Ms. Lamprey, the curriculum coach, and how do we bring in some of the ELL students? How do we get some of the special ed students? How do we get in more girls, people who may not think that they're good in computer science? And again, I'll give you a handout, but there's 5 guiding principles. So the way that impacted us was that it's a lot more than just offering a course. It really motivated us to do systemic change and bring together everyone involved who works with students. I'll just go kind of breeze through this. So In terms of the grant itself, we finally were provided with a planning grant of around $10,000. There's an implementation grant this year of $50,000, and then the idea in the future is that the funding for this program would be added to the foundation formula. So we get an added increase for each student who signs up for the pathway. So this is the important part, is that when we talk about doing systemic change, we have a lot of people involved. And we'll have a lot of people involved going forward. There's 27 of us who have had a hand in making this happen and applying for the grant and getting the Innovation Pathway designation for Burlington High School. So you can see administration, guidance, tech integration. And I'd like to say a special word of thanks to the Career Exploration and Internship Committee, which is headed by Deb Deacon. Always there, always supporting this, really helped to make it happen. Joe and Gloria and guidance were completely on board, which was critical to us getting this grant. Leroy has been a big factor in providing the personalized learning component that also helped us get the grant. And Katie Whitcomb, who's our math chair, who is fortunate enough to also oversee computer science, has also been a big player in this too. But everyone's made an impact, and again, administration, Dennis, Mark, the support has been really helpful all around in making this happen. So this initiative is part of our overall initiative for Computer Science for All, and I know Dennis has spoken with you about that. And actually, I want to point out that on the website, is that the link? Oops.
Can you also tell us where that is on the, it's under district?
Yes, yes. So actually, I wanted to, let me see. I wanted to go to the website to show you. If we can just go to it. So it's, and there we go. So it's under district, and then it's right here, the Future Innovators Pathway.
All right, good.
And so this outlines the program and talks about, for students who are participating, all the different facets of it, that they have to take exploratory courses, they have to take college-level courses, they do career exploration activities, and they do a capstone project. All right, so career exploration, we have a wide range of activities that the kids have enjoyed this year, and the idea is to really provide a comprehensive career exploration program that starts really in 8th grade and continues on through senior year. Here's a picture of all the students who were part of the capstone project this year, and we had 50 students, which was tremendous. And lots of fun to manage. Yeah. For the capstone project, the way we make it unique is that the students do a project here, but we bring in industry mentors. So we had mentors from a wide range of companies coming in once a week. I need water. We also had speakers talking about GitHub, LinkedIn, game development, flying drones. We had field trips. And we also had one company come in and provide an entire day of a STEM camp for the kids, so it was really amazing. These are some of the companies who have participated. So we have a lot, and we have a lot of other opportunities as well. Oh, thanks, Eric. I think it's allergies. My mouth is so dry. Thanks. You're welcome. So this is a picture of one of our students, Tommy, and he was interested in learning about cybersecurity. So Emily on the left is an engineer at MITRE and came in and spent time, really just a few lunches with him talking about how to use Python. And in his letter of thanks, he said that having Emily come to meet with him, typo, be my mentor is probably the most influential experience in my internship, and she really helped to open my eyes to the world of cybersecurity. So, I mean, it was really gratifying to see that just 1 or 2 meetings with an engineer made a profound difference. In terms of funding for this year, we received in-kind donations from Amazon and Microsoft. Amazon provided curriculum, Microsoft provided computers, which is great, and Code.org is providing training over the summer. And then the Innovation Pathway, we finally have a $10,000 planning grant, and we're hoping to receive the $50,000. It'll be announced on the 19th. Our goals for next year, teacher professional development, coordinating the career exploration, really improving the curriculum in Capstone, because it's critical that the work we do and the things we teach the kids are aligned with what is needed in industry. And as we know, that's going to change every year. Equipment and materials, and then outreach and recruitment. And again, I just see the kids here, and I think, like, how can we get all the kids who are here tonight to take some of the computer science classes? Oh, okay. And, oh, that's better. And then offering academic support and providing more assistance around industry partnerships. And finally, building a program advisory committee that will meet 4 times a year to help really guide the program moving forward. So that's the program in a nutshell. And I can give you these documents which really outline the state requirements for this program, and I think it's been a lot of work to apply for it. They've had, oh, thanks, guys. There's so many requirements and so many people involved, but the good thing is that it has made the school system stronger, and I think this will really benefit us in a lot of ways in the future.
Again, Madam Chair, just
Thank you.
I want to stress the amount of time that Shireen, Ms. Terrell has put into the Pathways grant. It's not an easy process. She mentioned a whole team up there, and many people contributed, but she was certainly the champion of this effort. Mark, I'm just trying to think of, are there only 14 other, I think there were 14 grants awarded. I believe that there's one of 14. Do you remember?
I know there were, I think initially 14. I think they did another round, but it's not a huge number.
So there's, yeah. So
Well, the good thing about this too is that I think because we're providing a vocational track in the high school, that we'll be eligible for other funding as well, which will be good.
So I think that would be it. I'm always struck, Mrs. Monaco, you talk about the history of Burlington High School and computer science goes back decades. And
It was great way back.
and we're trying to certainly revive it. We're blessed with geography. We have very welcoming business partners, and I think we're trying to do more and more outreach to those business partners. They're very excited, honestly, because I think they're good neighbors anyway, but because there's a huge need to have future employees who have these skills. And I just think it's a pathway that we have to continue to work on. Mr. Wong, just briefly, you took 2 of our seniors too. That wasn't associated with career pathways, but you were at the State House. You were with Hallie and trying to.
Arushi. Arushi, yes.
So, and they were part of the MassQ.
That's correct. It was basically like an event called Education Evolution. So the idea was to have school districts apply to present, I guess, to state representatives and senators or just anybody in the public about innovative things that we've been doing. So the 2 young ladies or 2 students I brought were 2 students that actually went through the internship project. So they brought some of the things that they had shown. Superintendent Conti was there, as well as Assistant Superintendent Larkin. So thank you for coming to the event as well. And so yeah, it was a great experience for them. One of them in particular is very interested in policy. So one of the things she talked about was the fact that there are so few young women that are, interested in computer science. There are articles that you see in the news about it. They did some research about it here. Seems like the situation is, not as, well, I don't know how to put it. Like, I think the willingness to learn of young women that want to go into computer science is not as dire as it seems, but I think just trying to figure out how to get them interested, get them into, maybe something like the innovation pathway would be something that we need to just really kind of concentrate on. So obviously, Shireen's done an amazing job with spearheading this and just, working with me. She's been a great partner, just in a number of ways, the grant and other things that we've been doing. So I want to thank her publicly for that.
So, and again, some of this is actually logistical. And so it's not just about local effort, even though there's a lot happening at the local level too. School committee, and want to thank the Ways and Means Committee, and then ultimately town meeting supported a CS for All warrant article, and that's going to allow us to retrofit some classroom spaces both at the middle school and the high school. And we're going to be offering a curriculum through code.org called Discovery, is that correct? CS Discoveries. So all of our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, starting next year with grade 6, will be having a computer science experience before they leave middle school. And I think that's then going to drive demand at the high school for computer science, explorations or computer science principles, which would be the advanced placement course. We've talked about this before. MassCore is how the Board of Ed at the state defines the courses they want students to have in order to apply to state colleges and universities. And I think it was 2 springs ago, the Superintendent's Association petitioned to have computer science taken out of the elective group of MassCore and put in as a substitute for a math or a science class as a core. So the state board did adopt that, but they haven't gone far enough. What we'd also like to see is then performance on a computer science exam, like an AP exam, but ultimately maybe even a performance test. But if students get a 3 or better, we feel that should count towards their science requirement towards a high school diploma. So they wouldn't have to go back then and take a biology MCAS, for instance. It's not that those courses aren't important, but there's too much emphasis being put on that particular test, and it's narrowing down the curriculum and the options that students have in terms of their accountability towards a high school diploma. So we don't necessarily see that in Burlington, but Ms. Lamprey will tell you in many gateway cities and urban centers where there's many students who are second language learners, what they've done is they've created a 2-year biology experience, because biology has a tremendous amount of vocabulary, and the students have to learn the vocabulary in order to pass the biology MCAS test in order to qualify for a diploma. And we're saying what might be a better match to the Massachusetts economy is if they have a 2-year computer science experience, get a 3 in the exam, and then they would be more marketable in terms of being prepared. So life science is an incredibly important part of the Massachusetts economy. The Broad Institute is known around the globe, and they currently are hiring more computer scientists than they are biologists. So I'm just saying it's a skill that they think they need knowledge in everything. Please, I'm not discounting. I was a biology teacher, but I just think these skills are something that we need to do. And then with the school committee's permission and the support of the State Association of Superintendents, I just returned, again, I think last night at 1 in the morning, from Little Rock. Asa Hutchinson, who's the governor in Arkansas, has been leading Arkansas and then the rest of the country on expanding computer science education. So he spoke, he was there with the governor of Iowa and the governor of South Carolina, and Shireen and I talk all the time that there's not enough state effort, because in South Carolina, they've set aside basically $2.5 million every year from the state to train teachers. Teachers get a $5,000 stipend during the summer to get the training to teach computer science, and they're also paying students. Students who get a 5 on the computer science principles test get $1,000, and if they get a 4, they get $750. So what's going to happen is employers are looking for groups of employees that have these skills, and they're going to relocate to states that have workers who are doing this. So we're feeling like we're in a very competitive time in terms of changing our curriculum and some of our habits, because the sequence in math has been around for a very long time, and the sequence in science has actually been around since the 1890s. So it's we have to rethink this, but there's really no room to do that. So it's programs like the Innovative Pathways and efforts that are happening at the high school that I think are going to allow more of our students to graduate these skills, because they're saying knowledge of problem solving, algorithmic thinking, computer science, computer programming, coding, however you want to call it, whatever you refer to it, is a new literacy, and they're saying it's a fundamental literacy for all students, and we just have to do a better job. Mark, in the program of studies this year, I'm sorry I put you on the spot, but our sections keep growing, is that correct? So
7 sections this year.
7 sections this year, and they're going to continue to grow. So I'm assuming in future budgets, you're going to see need for us to either have more teachers cross-trained, which we are trying to accomplish now, or we're going to be needing more computer science teachers. And again, those teachers with those skills have lots of choices in the marketplace. So we're really fortunate to have talented teachers like we do working with these kids. So thank you all for doing that. But we're sort of starting small. We have lots of district-based actions, and then we're also trying to get to the state to change some of their behaviors so that we can have more students having proficiency in computer science, along with all the other proficiencies that they're going to need moving forward. So.
Did you want to add something?
Oh, it's too far. I just wanted to add that, it won't happen on its own, and that's why, this is really just a drop in the bucket, but there's such an opportunity to really impact all of our students, and we want to make sure they're prepared. So I think we will need to do more to make this happen, and in the long run, it's not a big effort for the return, but we do need to do a lot more around marketing and outreach and providing opportunities for the students to learn these skills. And it's also been about reaching the teachers and helping them gain these skills so they can bring them into the classroom, and helping guidance as well, understand where things are shifting and where we can help students. So we do need your help. We'll need your help to support this.
Yes, Ms. Monaco.
I'm very into the whole computer science thing, and I think this is great. I think you could solve a part of your problem with having more students and more girls by eliminating the conflict with band. I have grandkids that will say to me, well, I have one, I think I told you this the last time you were here, one that he said, well, I really want to be an engineer, but I really love music, and this is my only opportunity, and this socialization piece to the band, and so I can't fit computer science into my schedule.
So we did actually, in this year's program of studies, we did start to address that. We changed some of the prerequisites so that instead of having a very rigid path for students to get a touch of computer science, there's a lot more on-ramps, a lot more options, so they could take one course and at least get something. We also have computer science offered as both an exploratory as well as an elective. So they could fulfill their, I guess, is band elective or exploratory? Elective. So they could use the computer science to fill it exploratory. But I was having students say they couldn't get to this in their schedule, so we made it more possible. And actually, next week, when we have a little time, we're actually looking at the program of studies, not for next year, but for the subsequent year, to figure out how we can use art, and we're also integrating computer science into business. So how we can expose kids in a lot of different ways, because you're right, it's hard for them to make choices that are.
A lot of the band kids, Mr. Isla, Luke had the same issue, right? And he did some band and some computer, he skipped a year of band or something like that?
No, if I may.
Yep.
I think Ms. Monaco hit the nail on the head here. My suspicion is there's a large overlap between students that enjoy the science-type courses and computer science, and there's a real challenge if you want to take the AP science courses and then take some computer science. I know my son in particular never got to the computer science AP course because even though he's qualified, he couldn't take because he didn't have the prerequisite.
Yeah, so we got-
So, you know, the prerequisites do make for a long path. And just looking at the pathway on the website here, it's basically a 4-course pathway when you add it up, in addition to a capstone. So it's essentially taking up every elective slot you have, and if you are in band, you've essentially run out of ways to do this. So it is a challenge. You know, it's the same issue we had with the middle school schedule. If only you had 10 periods a day, it would all work out fine. So I'm not sure what the solution is, but that is a real challenge for the students.
And again, through the chair, Mr. Ryder, but we've been saying that for a long time, and I think that's why we're looking for some true substitutions instead of having to sort of fulfill all of our state requirements and do this on top of it. Because we've said from the beginning, if they said we need to teach less Eurocentric languages, if we needed to add Farsi as a language, we might have trouble finding teachers of Farsi, but the department and the mechanism for getting those courses is already built into the schedule. So students would just make a different choice. With computer science, it's a whole new pathway, and it's being very intrusive on other course selections that have existed for a long period of time. So
I do think the option of, you know, swapping it out with perhaps biology or whatever is a good idea. You know, I think that's the kind of choices that need to be available to work a creative solution.
Mrs. Monaco, I would something else you wanted to say?
Yes, I would like to reinforce what John said about the students that are really into music. Typically are also really into math, so I don't think that a survey course is satisfying to those kids. These are kids that want to take all the science courses and want to take, you know, the AP and also the math courses. I think what I would like to see, and you know, maybe the state wouldn't like to hear this, but I mean, why can't it substitute for some other, why not a humanities course of some sort? Why does it have to be that you give up a science class or a math class in order to take computer science? It doesn't, you know. Anyway, I would like to see every kid have the opportunity in their schedule to take these courses, and I think you would find a whole lot more girls that are really interested.
So, so we did offer computer science principles, which is an AP course, and that does not have prerequisites, and we have seen a surge in enrollment because it's an exploratory, it's one course, it gives them an AP level class, but they don't have the prereqs. But as far as what you're saying, thank you, we'll definitely take that into consideration when we're planning next year. And the other point is, for this particular pathway, I mean, this is a structured pathway that we want to offer. We're getting state funding to support it, but ultimately our goal is for all students to have some exposure to computer science. So while this pathway is something we want to offer, and particular kids who maybe aren't strong in math and science, we want to get them in, we still, you know, it doesn't mean that this is the only way to go, so.
The one other thing that I wanted to bring up was, I would be very interested in seeing how you could come up with some classes that would work for some of the special ed kids that may not be as strong in, you know, the ability to do some of the highly technical stuff.
Right.
But to see some of those kids find a computer science class that works for them, I think that would be great.
I mean, that's really the whole idea of this. And I mean, the Exploring Computer Science course, we offer CP. We'd like to make sure that we get more kids in there with special needs. Leroy does a really good job in his tech integration class of being able to offer individualized learning. So that's definitely an important component of this.
Thank you. Great effort.
Yes, Mr. Murphy.
Just briefly, I come at this from the diametric opposite of Mrs. Monaco. I'm an old liberal arts, humanities, and social sciences person. But I've been dragged, kicked and screaming into the 21st century, so I certainly understand and appreciate the
There's
importance of this.
Etch-a-Sketch.
Yeah, my
Right.
Etch-a-Sketch. So I think it's great that you're doing this, and it's very important, and the reality is, that's what's down the road, you know.
I mean-
Knowing Latin's a good thing, but
Well, our social studies chair is a big fan because we talk a lot about how, in terms of humanities and politics, being able to look at big data and analyze it and use that to really help you create good social policy is so important. So he's actually one of the biggest fans. So we're all about using the coding to help us in the humanities and in music.
I read a book recently, and it's all about this whole the technology and artificial intelligence but it's written by a guy named Andrew Yang, War on Normal People, and it's a very interesting book. And the gist of it is essentially, as artificial intelligence gets developed, there's a whole bunch of areas of our economy that are just going to go away. You know, you can have a robot doing something what you used to have 200 people sitting in a warehouse doing. And if you don't stay ahead of that curve, and if you don't stay up on it, there's going to be a whole bunch of people without any marketable skills. So it's clearly an important thing, and I appreciate the effort.
And I will shut up after this, but I just want to say that the Computer Science Principles course, part of that course is for kids to really think critically about technology and what's good and what's bad, and start them becoming active citizens and making decisions about using technology. So that's a part of it.
I agree. Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, just very quickly, again, I want to thank you for your efforts. It's Herculean from what I'm looking at. One of your slides talked about the economic advantages that are out there for students who graduate. I had a nephew who graduated recently from Northeastern, and he did one of his internships out in California. Of course, Northeastern's a 5-year program, and he graduated up at the top of his class. He had more opportunities for jobs than anything I've ever seen. He had his pick. And he ended up with HubSpot in Cambridge, which is a very rapidly
Right.
growing computer programming company. And, you know, for people that, if we can get more people into it, there's plenty of jobs out there for them. And they're good-paying jobs, and there's a lot of mobility in those jobs. You're not in a cubicle for 5 years, you know, you move up. So I think it's wonderful that we're trying to increase the participation at the high school. Thank you.
I also want to thank you all for the work. It's a lot to put these kind of programs together, and a lot of thought obviously went into it. I'm also a little more on the humanities side, but I think it is really important for everyone to understand. And I do think that because it is not just a job market and a vocational path, but a really very high level vocational path that we can encourage our students and make available for students who are interested. I also think for students to have alternatives, and I don't understand completely the electives versus the other things, but things that are outside of the traditional academic courses. I think it's really important. We used to have a comprehensive high school, but there isn't an opportunity at Burlington High School for a lot of things that are non-traditional academics. And in a lot of ways, the computer science, I think, is, you know, more like a traditional academic curriculum, but it also is an integration. And I think our students really, really benefit. So it's not just the science kids, and it's not just the humanities kids who want to learn data, you know, how to use big data, but also all of our students who are looking to put things together. And I really like, and it wasn't focused on, but you referred to it in the program of studies. We talked about it last fall, or winter, whenever we had that discussion. But the idea of, you know, it's the art department's involved with this computer science innovation pathway, and the business department is involved, and we're cross-training teachers, and the social studies department is interested. And so I'm very excited about the interdisciplinary nature and the outside of the traditional pathways for kids who don't necessarily fit those pathways. So I'm just delighted, and maybe we should move on now. You guys are getting tired. Is there something else? Did you want to speak a little more? Did you want to say something, Mrs. Lamprey, about the program, the students you work with?
Briefly, just to add on,
I am very grateful for all that Shireen has done to make this happen, as well as Leroy, and just the introduction that some of our English learners at the high school have had to some of this work. It's just been incredible. I had read an article in Education Week around the time that I was seeing some of this work, and it was talking about how technology courses are helping our English learners overcome some barriers, language barriers. And I've been seeing it this year, watching some of the students participate in Help Desk with Leroy, and not just isolated in Help Desk, but working in Help Desk with native English speakers. And the communication that's happening as they're working on robotics or programming is just amazing. And these are the students, we're seeing their English growth expanding rapidly. One of the students, in fact, said that he is very excited. His goal, he's going into his senior year next year, and his goal is to be the first person in his family to attend a university, as well as he wants to explore technology. He will be joining these courses next year. So I'm very excited for him for that opportunity, as well as you mentioned helping students who are in our special education program access. We have a student who's an English learner, also a student with disabilities, and seeing Leroy's interns that were working through the internship program with Ms. Deacon. They came into their science class with the English learners, and this student had another native English speaker help him to fly a drone, and he was programming it. And first, he was very hesitant to use the technology, you could see, but this student came over and used a bit of Spanish that he knew, as well as helping him out. Exactly. And this student flew it successfully, and the smile on his face when it flew in the air was just incredible. So I think we're seeing the success, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens next year. So thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing those experiences, because it really is all about the students. And thank you for the work you put into it. And
Yeah,
does anyone, do you have other comments at the Ways and Means table over there? No?
And again, yeah, it's rare for Burlington to be awarded a grant just because of where we sit. So this is an incredible amount of work. And also want to recognize and congratulate Ms. Terrell of a graduating senior from North Reading High School, valedictorian, right? Your son's valedictorian, so.
Congratulations.
So congratulations.
Yeah.
So thank you all very much.
Thank you for coming.
I know it's a late
Okay.
night, I appreciate it. A late night in June.
And I think Mr. Sullivan has some more to report on for us.
We didn't leave Mr. Sullivan much time, so
No.
I
You
apologize.
said 8:30, right? Yeah, so just the last thing on the agenda was the new schedule for the high school, and I gave you some information and background about the process that we've gone through. 3 years ago now, I think it was, when we did our self-study for the NEAS visit. 2 years ago now, we had the decennial visiting team that came out through a lot of self-reflection and discussions. There were some feelings among staff and also from the visiting team that came out and visited that corroborated it, and also shared that sentiments that our current bell schedule just wasn't fitting our current needs. So the process we went through, the 18-19 school year, we had a schedule committee that was chaired by two teachers, Mr. Missler and Mr. Djordjevic from the art department. It was a big committee, and I thank them for the work they did. Big committees sometimes are hard to manage with a lot of people that are on them, but it was comprised of really any staff that wanted to participate. There was a representative or two from every department at the high school. It was, administration was on it, there were parents on it, and there were students on the committee. The work that the schedule committee went through was to solicit feedback from the different stakeholders, parents, students, and staff, take that information and start to research best practices and schedules, look at schools around us that had schedules that were already in practice to kind of glean some information about how they worked. They went through a process that exhausted the school year and carried over into this year in the fall of the 1920 school year, where they had 1 or 2 final meetings to finish up the work and present 2 iterations of a schedule that were essentially the same with some minor differences. And ILT, the instructional leadership team at the school, which is comprised of department heads, administration, the school librarian, took one schedule and said that was the one. It was their first choice too. So the work that we did this year, a subgroup of building reps from the union, as well as ILT, Ms. Ciccolini from special education was on it, Joe Adubato from guidance, Matt Jackling, Katie Wickholm, myself, and then our 4 building reps. We took the year really to look at the schedule itself and made sure it worked for the different kind of logistical components that we have to ensure adequate prep time, to make sure that the services that we wanted to be able to integrate in for special education students was able to be honored. And specifically, that was to increase the flexibility for our high school age students to be able to access outside services, so whether they're transitional services, vocational, things that were very difficult with our previous schedule with the fixed times, to schedule outside providers to come in with that was challenging. What we did is April 24th, and the schedule had been shared many, many times with staff prior to this, but a final iteration of the schedule was shared on the 24th and 25th of April. On the 26th, we had a full day of building reps, administration, in fact, people that were on the subcommittee available during the day to talk to staff that had questions. Those questions were then shared with staff, kind of an FAQ that was put out. On April 27th through May 8th, staff had additional time for questions and answers if they had any. And then on the 8th at our faculty meeting, there was an opportunity for public discussion and a vote from the faculty at that time. You can see the breakdown in the graph. Basically, 88 responses, 1 non-response that voted yes, but she missed the window. So that's essentially our whole staff that voted. And not basically 85% voted in favor of it. But there are still some things that we have to do. So the plan is to next year take the year to make sure that staff has adequate time to plan for the transition from a pedagogical perspective, because there's more longer blocks. Every class is 60 minutes where you don't have the 44 minutes anymore, and to ensure that we have adequate preparation time for the incorporation of the flex block, the incorporation of the advisory program, if we can work out the details on that, and just to give staff the time to prepare for the change. And that's where we're at today. So it can be, the link to the schedule was actually at the top. I don't know if it was actually printed out, but if anybody has the electronic on the top of that sheet, the blue link, that's the actual
it's a
schedule
PDF.
itself.
Okay.
So if you wanted to see it. And then I put some notes on it. It's a type of block schedule, and they can be a little bit confusing and overwhelming to look at first. Put some notes. It's 5 classes per day. It's still a 7. Students have a 7 schedule or 7 class schedule, but they only see 5 per day. 2 dropping, and it still rotates in nature, so you see kids at different times of the day. The reason, if you look at the top, why it goes backwards and backwards, that's really for scheduling purposes, so that we don't have teachers teaching back-to-back periods, and that we can make sure we can still adequately provide preparatory time for them during the day, as well as still fulfilling our administrative duties, our teacher duties, to make sure that the building is monitored during the school day. Homeroom has been eliminated, which I was not a fan of, but I was talked into it. So there's 4 extra minutes at the beginning of the first period every day for attendance and announcements. Again, the classes rotate in a 7-day cycle. If you're looking at it, the red and blue, the blue days, Tuesday and Thursday, are the days that have the flex built in the middle of the day. And again, the flex periods will be for intervention, enrichment, and extra support. We visited Lexington High School that incorporated this several years ago. There's a scheduling, I think it's called Student Smart or something like that, that can schedule the students for this intervention block. Teachers have the ability to sign kids up first, and then the kids can sign up for things that they want to do. There are kind of open spaces, like directed administrative studies for kids that maybe don't need anything and just need that extra time. The fitness center could be open. The gym teachers at Lexington set up badminton courts. Students have the opportunity to make up tests, go for extra help. There is an opportunity to have clubs and activities potentially meet during this time. Some of the schools that we've talked to that have incorporated this have kind of warned against it just because of competitiveness and making sure that the time is used to actually support students and not have it be a replacement for after-school stuff. And then the prep period, obviously, we made sure that teachers still had their adequate prep time. Common planning will still be incorporated, just like we do this year. It would be on the once a month that it falls. The schedule would just indicate that students would come in a little bit later during that time.
Would you be willing to send us the link directly? Because
Yes.
on this PDF, it's not live.
Yep.
That would be helpful. Although I do want to say, as a former high school teacher, that these kinds of rotating schedules with block schedules and drop periods and such, you look at it and it looks
Yeah.
impossible. But in fact, basically, once people start using them, they start to learn how it works. And I have faith in our teachers and our students that whatever that red and blue day thing is going to look like when I open up the link, it's doable. So, and especially because of the process and the preparation that you've taken with your staff. And I just applaud all of you, because it's a lot of work and it's a lot of hard decisions to be made. So, thank you.
Yeah, and I believe there would have to be some sort of acceptance or vote for the schedule. And once that is official, again, next year, there'd be a lot of communication and outreach to make sure everybody knows exactly what to expect in September of
2020.
20, jeez.
Yeah, just to
Scary.
reinforce, this is not a schedule that's starting in September this year of
Correct.
2019.
It's a
It's
full
going to
year
start a
away.
year from this coming September.
Right, yep.
Yes, yes, Mr. Murphy?
Are you looking for approval from this board after you work it out more, or?
No, I think
is
the structure is in place. I think the things that we're going to do next year is to more prepare teachers for the changes in the teaching blocks, basically, and to give us time to have expectations. You know, a big thing is, one of the reasons that we are doing this schedule, we do the youth risk behavior survey biannually, and consistently the information comes back. Our kids are stressed, they're overwhelmed, they're overworked, they're stretched too thin. In theory, this should alleviate some of those concerns. You're not going to have, if you have a 5, or I mean, most kids have a study or an elective, if you have 5 or 6 nights of homework, you won't have that anymore. You really should only have 5. Obviously, there are some AP exceptions. You have to do reading and things. But the idea wouldn't be for teachers to double up on homework. And so the spirit of it is to just make sure teachers are ready for that kind of change.
Perhaps if we count this as a first reading, we can put it on for a vote at our next meeting. I mean, I'm fine with it. You guys clearly put a lot of work into this, and if you think it's going to work, then I'm good with it.
Yeah.
So I'm prepared to approve it, but if we want to treat it as a first reading, second
I
reading.
don't think we're in a rush right now, so I just wanted to introduce that the high school is changing schedules. I think we'll continue to work, and I think, Mr. Murphy, next fall is when we can
That's fine.
probably ask you to do that. So,
Okay.
just in case you want to make some changes.
All right, good. Any other comments?
Yeah, it's an impressive amount of work. It looks like it's a good product.
A lot of people participated. I think there was a lot of help and support, and I think it'll be a good change. And there's no perfect schedule. I think this will have hiccups. You know, I think, and I put a note in here. One of the staff members on their vote noted that change is good, and with continued discussion, variations will follow that are for the good of all. I think that the spirit and intent of this is to improve the kind of daily and yearly experience for our kids and our staff. So I'm confident that this will be a good, really bell schedule. The types of classes, the time on learning is not changed. Actually, I think we got a couple of extra minutes. And one thing I should note is that I know that the afternoons with the later start time for high school staff has been challenging. This schedule actually gets the end time of the day to 2:50. So if you look at that 15 minutes will need to be accounted for. I'm not saying that they'll have 15 less minutes in their day, but if they're coming in earlier in the morning and still staying for their contractual time at the end of the day, they're leaving at 3:05 or able to, rather than leaving at 3:20, which I think will positively impact the staff that have been impacted in the afternoons. Yeah.
Well, it's obviously a very thoughtful process that you went through, and I would guess that it's also been helpful for morale, that people have been included in the discussion, and I hope, I mean, I don't know, I haven't talked to other people, but I'm hoping that that's another indication of a a good running school, well-running school, and thank you for leading that process as well.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, thank you for your time tonight, too.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be
There's
here.
anything else? You got anything else?
I could, but I want to let Dr.
All right.
Conti go home at some point. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr.
So, Dr. Conti, would you like to do, what would you like to do next? The financial update?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So again, in front of you, we're following the new schedule. So the month of May concluded, and we're trying to get this out the first week of the month, again, separate from the school committee meeting. This is the first school committee meeting of June, so that's kind of why we're doing it today. But we'll try to follow that same pattern moving forward. So again, end of the month, and then that first week, you'll see the financials. First page is summary of the revolving accounts.
There's some copies up here, if you want to look at them on Sharon's table there. Thank you.
Again, the first page is the revolving accounts. Again, all the balances, again, are positive. The school lunch is not. And again, we won't know the full extent of the school lunch except during the summer. But, we keep asking, are we looking like we were looking last year? Are there concerns? And I think we're tracking along where we are. There were no red flags in the school lunch account right now. But again, just reiterating a point from earlier in the conversation, I think it would be unfair to have the revolving account carry if we were going to move away from cheaper materials to more expensive materials. I just think you would certainly see the impact on the revolving account if that were to be the case. So just something for us to consider. Not that it's an idea that we shouldn't consider, but I just don't think we can have the revolving account carry compostable lunch trays, for instance, at just at 10 times as much. Page 2 and page 3, those are the budgets, sort of the straight-up fiscal 19 budget in terms of budgeted, encumbered, and the remaining amount. So that would be, again, relatively straightforward. And then page 4 is, again, the same budgeted, encumbered, and remaining budget for the accommodated account. And then that's year-to-date. The pages that sort of get my immediate attention, I always go through this backwards, are 5, 6, and 7. So 5 and 6, again, are the budget amounts that you've seen, plus the projected out, and then the current anticipated surplus or deficit moving forward. So these are the expenses that we're aware of and that we're tracking, which is sort of the important number. Again, to the school committee, if we're getting close to the end of the fiscal year, if at the end of the fiscal year we need to make some line item adjustments from salary to non-salary, Nicole will bring those to you at the end of the year to do that. But what I'm really most concerned about now is the bottom line. So there may be some pluses and minuses. I understand that going down, but if we look at the bottom line, it looks like we are about 80,000 to the good. And again, the question is, am I comfortable? The answer is no, not until the fiscal year closes. But we're getting close to that. I will say our biggest payroll just hit last week. It wasn't in this month's warrant, but you'll see it next week, and that's been accounted for. So the payroll that makes me most nervous is the
Final.
year-end pay, sort of, because that has longevity, stipends, everything else in it. And that one's out and covered, so the payrolls are smaller during the summer. So we're, it's that payroll that gets a lot of attention. So that payroll's in and booked, again, not on this warrant, but it'll be on the next warrant. So, so again, 5 and 6 are the projected operating. And then page 7 is the accommodated projected as well to the end of the fiscal year. And again, never saying never, but look like we're in a position to end the fiscal year. We may have some expenses that are coming in that I've sort of learned about recently, but I think those expenses can be covered in the $154,000 surplus that we have in the accommodated account. And again, that is, as everyone knows, that's a town account, so there's money left over in the accommodated account that would just go back to the general fund. So again, the operating is close, and sort of knew it would be close starting in January. And I think that, again, I'm not going to say I'm comfortable. I won't be comfortable until we close it out, but I think it's better than being 80,000 in the hole, so we're in the right place. And as I said, I know there are going to be pluses and minuses as we close out the fiscal year. I think Nicole will then come to the committee, and if we have to make some adjustments, I'm not sure what the correct accounting term is, but if we have to move money from salary to non-salary to make sure the bottom line works, she'll present those changes to you for a vote probably in July. I'm not sure she'll be ready to close things out June 25th, but probably in July is when she would be ready to do that. And again, the cafeteria, she won't close out until probably August, just because the federal government works a little bit more slowly with that.
And just to clarify, this is as of June 1st, these numbers.
End of May, yes. Closeout of May is the process we're doing, is we're closing out the month, and then the next week, we're preparing these documents, and then we're getting them to you as soon as they're prepared, and then we'll present them publicly at whatever the next school committee meeting is.
Okay.
So we're disconnecting it from the school committee meeting schedule.
Right. Okay. All right. Mr. Nelson?
Eric, I just had a quick question on the page 7 for the accommodated account. It says that we've essentially budgeted for the circuit breaker 65%. And then it says projected as of 6/1/2019, 65%. Does that mean we're going to get it? Is that a certainty at this point?
We believe we're going to get our 4th payment. The state hasn't said they're going to withhold their 4th payment. And I actually think we're going to get more than 65%. But we got ourselves in trouble 2 years ago because in order to make a guideline number, we maxed out the expectation on circuit breaker, and that caused problems. So what we're saying is we're projecting, even in the budgeting for 20, we're projecting 65% on the circuit breaker. We're hoping we get 72%, and again, that would just help the balance from where we are now.
Okay.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Other questions from the committee? Just, yes, from Mr. Eiler.
Great, thank you. So just comparing this to the May forecast, it looks like the forecast for your operating budget, we lost about 25K. For your accommodated budget, we lost about 25K. So that doesn't seem too bad. It seems like the two main changes compared to the previous forecast were line item 17, on the lane changes. And it seems like this may have bounced around a little bit. The lane changes had been forecasted at spending $145K, and now the forecast of that went back to spending zero. So the whole budget is surplus essentially. So I was just curious what happened that we're not spending anything on lane changes now, or not expecting to.
I'm not sure. I'll find out for you.
Okay. So that seemed a little odd, because I haven't gone back to the previous month, but it looks like as I recall, it jumped up previously, so it seems to be bouncing around a lot. So there's something going on there that would be good to understand.
Okay.
The other one is line item 27, tutors. I think that had about 115K. That went from being even to now being 115K deficit. So I was just curious, has the run rate on tutors changed all of a sudden, or has there been some kind of surprise in the late billing of something? What caused that to jump so much in one month?
Again, Mr. Eiler, I'm not sure. Maybe she was catching up or there's been an adjustment. I'll ask those two specific questions and I'll get you those answers.
Okay, just make sure that we really believe what it is now.
Yep.
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 But, overall, it looks like the deltas in total from last month aren't bad.
Other questions or comments from the Ways and Means? Yes, Mrs. Harrigan.
I just have, this China, I'm looking at the revolving fund.
Thank you.
The China Pathways account's been there for, I think, quite a few
Yes.
years with no activity.
Right.
So at some point, if we can start to get rid of some of these dead accounts, that would probably be a good idea, just to make it less stuff.
Through the
Yes.
chair, Ms. Harrigan, I think we're still waiting for the final agreed to procedures on the revolving account from Powers and Sullivan, and we're assuming when we get that work, and I don't think he looked at some of those smaller accounts. He looked at sort of the 5 or 6 primary large ones, but I think we're hoping, and what I'm assuming, he'll make a recommendation for us to eliminate some of these others, and then we'll do that as part of following his recommendation.
Do you have any idea when we're getting those?
No, again, I've asked for an update, so I'm assuming I'll get an update soon. They've done other site work here, so they're not waiting for any information from us.
Yeah, I definitely want to have those accounts that aren't being used anymore closed, and it is hard to just wait, but there are all these things going on that we need to wait for, and I'll be looking forward to when Ms. Kasha brings us those things that need to be closed, and with recommendations of how to do that. So, yes. Any other questions from Ways and Means? Mrs. Briganti, no? Okay. Is there anyone in the audience who has any questions tonight? No. Okay. Thank you for making that report. Now we'll move on for old business. Ms. Dorothy Presser is here from the Massachusetts Association of School Committees to make a presentation for us and to share information about what kinds of resources and services are available from the MASC. And she's going to explain these services. We've had, in our packet, we have a listing of the various categories, and at the last meeting, we talked quite a bit about policy issues and about training and workshop kind of issues. But I thought it would be helpful, and Dr. Conti, we want to invite you to come. So have you been the field director for Burlington for a while now, or is it?
I've been the field director for Burlington since the beginning of the year.
Okay, so.
Mike Gilbert, who was formerly your field director, retired at the end of last year. We realigned territories and at Burlington, along with the other territories on sort of the North Shore, Cape Ann, Boston area. I would just briefly like to introduce myself as your field director and then highlight some of the services that we have based on the conversation that I had with Ms. Simon. As she said, I'm Dorothy Presser. I have been a field director with MASC actually for 5 years, but in a different part of the state as the field directors have changed, we're changing territories as well. Prior to being a field director, I worked as a consultant with MASC on developing a district governance project, which is a series of workshops that bring the best practices of effective school committees that have a positive impact on student achievement. It's a research-based series that was developed with MASS and with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. I've also served as the president of MASC in 2011 and was on the board of directors for a number of years. I just completed 21 years of service on my own school committee in Linfield. People seem to be impressed by that, but I know for some of you, 21 years is in the rearview mirror, so not anticipating that you would be impressed by that. So I know you had in your packet a menu of some of the services that we have to offer, which fall into, several big buckets. Policy support, training, and advocacy are the three biggest budgets that we have. Just to highlight a couple of the newer services that we have, we recently started something called the Daily Ed, which is a daily recap of education articles from across the state. You can go on our website and sign up. You'll get a daily email with an article. If you're familiar with all of the master lists, that kind of highlights articles from around the state. It's that kind of idea. This summer, we'll have our third Summer Institute. I'm sure you're familiar with the conference that we have in November. A lot of people are busy around that time of the year or can't necessarily make it because of work. So the Summer Institute is a Friday evening and Saturday morning in July where you have the opportunity to take or participate in a number of panel sessions. This summer we have a series of panel sessions on equity, and then we have a series of panel sessions that are more professional development geared, social media, Chapter 70, and the role of the chair. I talked with Ms. Simon about policy, and my understanding is that perhaps there's a feeling that maybe there's some policy work for you at the present time. However, you were feeling that a number of years ago you engaged MASC for some policy work that you were a bit dissatisfied with. So I did some research. One of the things that I like about working at MASC is we're a member service organization, and we want to make sure that our members are well serviced. So I did a little research about what might have happened. And I went to the two field directors 10 or 11 years ago that would have been in Burlington. Neither of them could remember doing a policy project with you. So I went to our member services director and said, do you have any record of any policy work that we did for Burlington? She did not. So I went to our accounts receivable person and said, what billing did you show? We do two things with policy. The most common thing that we do is a policy review where we come in and work extensively with the district to sit down and go through the policy manual. And that is relatively expensive. The charge is $10,500. We also sell our policy manual. And what I found was that Burlington, 11 years ago in 2008, was billed $500 to buy the policy manual, and that was the extent of any policy work that we did with you. So I can talk to you a little bit more if you'd like about actually the policy service that we have. When districts or committees engage us in that work, districts provide us with their current policy manual and any other policy documents that might be relevant. We take that and match it to our policy reference manual. We work with the policy subcommittee and go through that series of documents that we put together, policy by policy, and match. There are going to be policies that Burlington has that we don't have in our reference manual, which could be absolutely perfectly appropriate. There's always individual policies for individual districts. There may be ones that we have in our manual that you don't have. You may decide you want to adopt those. You may decide they're not relevant to you. There may be ones that we both, our policy reference manual and your policy manual have, but they don't match. So then we would talk about what are the differences in wording and what makes sense. Oftentimes, it could be that somewhere along the line there was a legislative or a regulatory update that is reflected in our manual and may not be reflected in yours. And then there may be times when the two policies match directly and we just move on. So that is the sort of the Cadillac of policy services that we provide. That is The charge for that is $10,500. It's billed over 3 fiscal years. And sometimes the process takes more than 1 fiscal year to actually complete. Even if you complete it sooner, we still bill it over the 3 fiscal years. So it's not a hit to your budget all at one time. So that may be something that you're interested in pursuing. We also have Policy 21, which is an online hosting service. You can easily go on our website and see the 70-plus districts right now that take advantage of that service. Once your policy manual is ready, and we have a hosting service that puts it online. So rather than having paper copies of your manual around the district, you have a link to the policy manual. It makes it easier to keep everything updated. It's easy to do a keyword search, so that if someone's looking for what is your policy on transportation, they can put in transportation. I'll bring up every policy that has the word transportation in it. And it also has hyperlinks to all the laws and regulations that are referenced in policy. So that might be something that you may want to consider as well. And then, in part because it's the time of year that it is, I'll mention that we often work with committees, particularly over the summer, when committees are deciding that they want to have workshops, to facilitate the workshop. We can either do something that is part of our district governance program or other training that you would like to have. The advantage of doing that is you're doing it all as a committee, so you're all sort of participating in the same, sort of absorbing and learning the same material. Or we can tailor the workshop to be, to help facilitate whatever you decide that you want to accomplish at your workshop. Sometimes it's just easier to have a facilitator come so that everyone can participate in the workshop equally. And that is a member service, and there would be no charge for doing that. I also mentioned that the district governance program is also a member service with no charge for participating.
Okay. So thank you for coming. I think there was perhaps some confusion about whether you were coming or not, and I apologize if that was true. I had the sense after our meeting, last meeting, that people were in agreement that we might have a presentation and to find out more. And we did get this flyer that you sent us, but I thought a description from you might be more helpful. Would people like to ask questions about what Dorothy just described, or?
I mean, I don't have any questions. I appreciate that you came. It's nice to meet you, make the connection. The handout, I think, summarizes sufficiently what the services that are available. I think then it's up to us to decide what if anything, we think we're gonna need now or later or whatever. But it's nice to know what's out there, and it's nice to put a face to a name.
Sorry you had to wait so long, but there was definitely some confusion about what was happening tonight, and unfortunately you ended up towards the end of the agenda.
I was aware of that. I was also invited to be able to be here to hear the student presentations, which I took advantage of and very much enjoyed.
Good. I'm sorry you had to wait, but thank you for your information.
Not at all.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you. I think there was a little bit of confusion. We didn't really have a chance as a committee to talk about the various opportunities there are for professional development, et cetera. You mentioned one thing, Dorothy, about workshops. Are they different fees depending upon the type of a workshop that it is?
For a committee? No. No, those are all member services. If you go to the Summer Institute or the conference, there's a registration fee for that. But if we come to you and facilitate a training workshop on any of the district governance topics, which are pretty broad, then that's a member service. There's no additional fee for that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And in reference to the category around workshops and such, I mean, I think that this committee is a very functional committee, and that things work very smoothly in general, although in this case maybe not so. But I feel like I wanted us to consider, because to me, it's, again, just like I think this committee works well, I think our school district is a good school district, but we're always looking for continuous improvement. And I thought that perhaps among all of us, there might be some topic that would be an advantage to have a separate, a conversation where it's one topic for the meeting. Litely, if we meet together, it's a public meeting. But if it's in a different setting or a different if it's organized differently and it's a little more informal, we could have a little more perhaps back and forth and get into some topics. Now, granted, Dr. Conti in the fall has brought us each year the Planning for Success, it's called now, and brings us those ideas, and we don't need to be coming up with those ideas from scratch. But there are just ways I wanted us to think if we wanted to do something that was regarding continuous improvement. And so this is just something we don't have to, obviously we don't have to decide tonight, but it could be any topic. I know Dr. Conti is looking forward to us working on the portrait of a graduate, which is the kind of thing we might do, although he would again be bringing us, a lot of that structure. But they're just different areas that we might be interested in. So that's one of my interests in taking advantage of the member services. And in this case, this would be free services. And if we decided to do it without having somebody from MASC, we could decide to do that too. So I wanted people to start thinking about ideas of things that we might talk about to have continuous improvement in the district. And in terms of, also at the end of our last meeting, I had this sense that everyone was pretty much in agreement we do need to review our policies. And, if I'm wrong about that, let me know. But to me, the idea of having somebody, I guess my understanding is that 11 years ago when Dr. Conti came, he suggested maybe that we look at the policies, or you folks, and the manual, it was probably discussed about having an ASC, but maybe decided not to spend the $10,000, and the book, was purchased, and I understand people spent a lot of time, and it was a lot of work for what did get reviewed. But, we could try it again, but I think it'd be worth it to have somebody from the outside. I mean, I know we would start with our policies, and we would compare them to the templates, but the idea wouldn't be to come in and replace all of our policies with the templates. I mean, if we look at what happened with our financial policies, they were all out of date, and I know that Ms. Kasha, our business manager, looked at template policies and prepared ones that were appropriate. We made some changes, and you had a lot of good suggestions of ways to make it relevant to our district and what we do. And I'd like to see us do that with or without MASC. We had that conversation at the last one, and I'd like to see us do those. And I see using someone with your kind of experience as an advantage to us trying to do it again by ourselves. And so that's where I stand with these topics. Did you want to make a comment?
I want to say, hi Dorothy, how are you? Good to see you. We're very fortunate. I think Dorothy is, your reputation precedes you, and I think many people rely on your support. So I'm happy that you're working with Burlington and we're in your area. I think our policy attempts 11 years ago, doesn't feel like 11 years ago, and I do think we were trying to use MASC as a resource then, and I just think you'd be a great resource now to help us in whatever capacity that we can. So, and so I do think the policy area would be something, even if we take a small section or do something, would be, I think just the work in between meetings and is something that I think would be helpful if the committee would sort of find that helpful. So I think that's an area, and we did have, I think, good intentions 11 years ago, and I think we did make some progress through some of the student sections, but again, it's just it's very time consuming, as you know, and and we can do that. And in terms of the conference topics and other opportunities for training, I think, again, I think those opportunities are very high quality. And one of the areas that I think I've been more exposed to in the last couple of years is advocacy. And I just think even some of the things we talked about tonight about getting some flexibility from the state in regards to graduation requirements, if we want to offer different pathways, I think MASC is a great way to amplify your voice and your concern. School funding, circuit breaker, all those things, I think Dorothy can amplify that message from this particular committee, and I think you've done a great job advocating for public schools. So thank you. And again, if there were sort of an immediate area, again, my 2 cents, I think just using them as a resource for some of the work that is more challenging and time consuming might be something for the school committee to consider. So.
Maybe if we actually get to a point where we want to act on some of the policy ideas, you could come back and be on the beginning of the agenda.
Either way is fine.
At the last meeting, I know, Ms. Monica, you and I both volunteered to do some of this policy work.
Right.
And I wonder, sort of, so where do we go from here? People don't seem to feel like, I don't have a sense that people are ready to make a decision tonight.
Sure.
But I wanted to know what people would like to do for a process of thinking about and going forward with that.
Well, maybe we should put it on a future agenda to discuss when we've had
Okay.
time to digest it.
Okay. And does that make sense to
I think
everybody?
it makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Good.
I
All right,
was
so-
also under the impression, Madam Chair, from the meeting that we had 2 weeks ago, that yourself and Chris were going to act as a subcommittee and at least start to take a look at what we have and to try to give the entire committee an idea of the scope of the scope of what we're going to be doing. Are we looking at a mass? I don't think we have a mass revamp of our policies. I don't think that. I mean, we've done a lot of policies over the last 10 years. With the help of town council, and I think we've used some of the recommended, I think town council has given us some of the recommended language, we've had some of the recommended language from MASC. But I think if you and Mrs. Monaco sit as a subcommittee and start the process and say, wait a minute, this is so overwhelming, then that would be important feedback for me.
I don't think we're going to get much done in the summer on that.
I don't expect you to spend the whole summer.
Yeah, I think maybe it'll be more of a fall project.
You can always bring it down to the
Well,
beach.
I just, I'm
Sit on the
actually-
beach and flip through the pages.
So I guess, I mean, I've looked through the policies and I guess it's in my bag. And I just, like briefly looking at them, see a number of things that I feel need to be addressed. So I don't.
Make a list of them.
Okay, but I also feel like, you know, yes, it's the summer, but I have a flexible schedule, and if the two of us could work any agreement out, I'd be happy to start that conversation this summer, so that maybe in the fall, we could say, this looks like what the scope of it is, or some such. If not, I can make a list by myself, so is that what people would like, for me to make a list by myself?
I don't think that that's what you're being asked to
Well,
do.
that's what you just said.
No, I said make a list, meaning that when you look at the
Of
policies.
things that I've noticed.
Right, if you make a list of the things that you've noticed, and if we at some point begin, I mean, Sharon and I went through a whole process
Yeah.
that she and I are familiar with.
Okay.
And so I think it's hard to sit here and explain it all, but you and I can talk about it.
Okay. Any other suggestions before the meeting? Okay. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay,
Really
I do
appreciate
have
it.
some more material
Okay.
than what you got, that just
Great.
explains some of the things in greater detail, has my business card in case you have any questions.
Thank you
know
very
how to
much.
reach me. and
Thanks for your help.
You're very welcome. Why don't I just give these to you and you can
All right.
distribute.
Thank you. All right. right, so what we have left now is new business.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just going to reverse the order with your permission, just because we have some folks here, I'm sure, who maybe aren't as interested in out-of-state travel. But the capital warrant article project closeout, again, I'm going to just read through it, and then this one, just to notify the committee, is going to require 5 separate motions to approve. So again, the background is Business Manager Nicole Kasha has requested school committee close out the following completed capital warrant article projects. Nicole and Bob worked to make sure, again, the projects were completed. These are prior warrant articles that the jobs have been done and there's money left in the warrant article. We obviously can't spend it on anything else, so we'd like to close out the warrant and turn the money back to the town. Again, I'm going to recommend through 5 separate motions that you close these out. I'll start with the oldest project and work my way newest, so from the bottom of the page up. The Fox Hill boiler replacement, again, the budget was $225,000. The actual cost was $217,951.55. So we spent 96.87% of the warrant, and that project is completed. So we'd like to turn back, again, the balance of $7,048.45.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 4-0.
Okay,
Thank you.
fiscal year 18, we have the Burlington High School field lighting replacement. The budget, the warrant was for $400,000. The actual was $351,275.50. Okay, there's a balance of $48,724.50. Again, the project cost 88% basically of the initial budget amount. That project is completed. So again, we'd like to turn back or close out $48,724.50.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I vote aye. That's 4-0. And the next one?
Fiscal 19, the Burlington High School mechanical roof repair. Again, the budget was $25,000. The actual expenditure was $24,932. There's $68 balance. We spent 99.7% of the warrant, and that project is completed. And again, we'd like to turn back $68.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 4-0.
Fiscal year 19, Burlington High School rubber gym divider wall. The budget was $35,000 in the warrant. The actual was $18,287.64. The balance is $16,712.36. We spent 52.25% of the warrant, and again, we'd like to turn back or close out the $16,712.36.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 4-0.
Fiscal 19, the Pine Glen refrigerator / freezer. The budget was $66,000. The actual was $33,206.86. The balance, that doesn't add up.
I was just going to ask you that.
Do you know why that doesn't add up?
Whoops.
Boy, I'm not a math specialist. Let me check on that. What the actual
Just a
was.
single digit off.
I'm wondering if that's a typo. Is that a typo? 43?
Looks like it's
Why don't you
one
put it
digit
off
to the next meeting?
Can we put it off to the next meeting?
It has to be 53 if there's 13 left.
You have it? Okay.
Yeah, the balance is 13,954.
Now, what's the actual, Sharon?
The actual is
Yeah, so-
33,206.86.
No, I have
Those
that.
don't even add up.
If you want to put on hold, I'll go look it up on Munis.
Yeah, we'll put out the 4 thing, and Bob will check it out right now if we can get that answer. So we've done 4 of the 5 closeouts.
Yes.
So,
Right. Okay.
and so if we can jump to out-of-state travel.
All right.
Principal Sullivan has submitted a request for an out-of-state student travel for the high school marching band and chaperones to travel to Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida, to participate in the Disney Magic Music Days during April vacation of 2020. There's no fiscal implications as the students are responsible for all expenses. It's recommended school committee approve out-of-state travel for the high school marching band and chaperones to Orlando, Florida on, between April 15th and 20th next year, 2020.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? I just want to say I'm just delighted that there's another Disney trip going next year, and I know the kids always do such a wonderful job and have a great time. So, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that passes 400. And that leaves us back with one, we're waiting on that, and
Again,
Yep.
Martha, Madam Chair, I'm sorry, you can close out the meeting. I think we can always add the last closeout if we have to.
no, she said. So is there anyone here for public participation? Yeah, oh, there is, okay, good.
There we are. Good evening, Eileen Sickler, I'm town meeting member, precinct 4. Policies, they were always very gruesome to do, so I applaud you for taking the lead in that. It's nasty stuff, but it has to be done. So 2 things. Yeah, I was going to ask about powers. I mean, that's been several months, so hopefully we'll have an answer, Dr. Conti, at the next week. Okay, great. The financial statements that we saw here this evening, they're going to be up on the website? I think that's what we, or you had said. Perfect. And then the bus contract. If there's any opportunity to do outreach with parents, that is polling for ridership before a new contract begins, I would ask that you consider that.
May I just ask some clarifications, Madam
Sure.
Chair?
Yes, please do.
Ms. Sickler, I just want to be clear. So you want me, you're suggesting that we ask parents whether they are going to participate in using the transportation? Is that what you're asking?
I guess, yeah. I mean, SurveyMonkey or something. I'm not exactly sure the specific questions that would be in that survey, but to get a really good idea about who uses the buses. And I guess I'm not clear on our policy. Is it that we have a seat for every student?
Yes.
And then the high schoolers, I haven't crunched the numbers, but there's 3 seats, but there's only really 2 that we attribute to them because of the size of the width of the seats or something? You know, where instead of 3 seats on the bus.
No, right. I think the...
So you've got a lot of questions there.
So the bus capacity for high school students is different than the capacity for
Okay.
elementary students. And I think we do ask at the start of every school year, as we're sort of shaking out routes and buses, and that usually takes us 2 to 3 weeks, the bus company does do bus counts for us. So we do get number of students who are riding the buses and on the buses. I think there are 3 tiers of service, and I'm glad Bob's here because he can correct any mistakes I make. So we're using the same buses for the middle elementary second run and then for the high school run at the end. So there may be, especially in the afternoon buses at the high school, because students have so many other activities, those buses may appear to be underutilized,
Yes.
but those same buses may be full on
Understood.
their runs for the middle school and then runs for the elementary school.
And then there's a late bus run or something, right?
I think
for
we
this
have
one?
3 afternoons where there's a late bus run, or there will be a late bus run. So even if we were to eliminate, say, half the buses at the high school to run buses with which
Yes.
were fuller,
Yeah.
obviously the routes would have to change. It would take longer to get the kids home, and that's one thing. But the cost savings, I'm not sure would be that significant because we're paying for the buses already. We need them for 2 other runs. So we might be saving some hourly cost of the bus driver is really what we might be saving. I'm not saying we shouldn't look into that.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is it's the afternoon bus runs for the high school it wouldn't be the driver for the need for the number of buses that we have. And I hope that's,
Yeah. So one of my sort of sore points was that, the information that we got for the number of buses was from the vendor who was selling the service. So, I mean, no offense, but I guess I'd want an independent survey. And also it would show, I think, on our part, the desire to really understand, who's taking the bus. But that's...
again, and maybe we can do that in terms of a satisfaction survey, because I do think, because I ride the bus one route, at least on the opening day, and I can tell you that those buses are sort of well occupied, especially for the elementary and the middle school runs. And the parents I talk to do appreciate having consistent bus drivers and services,
Sure.
and they really do form a relationship with the bus drivers, and I do think it's an important service. So I think parents would be very willing to talk about the importance of transportation and how much they utilize it. And I think the design that we have is to provide a seat for every student every day. And, but that doesn't mean every parent takes advantage of that seat every single day either. So
Right.
I'm saying I think that's part of the challenge we have.
Yeah, it was such a big number, I just had to.
No, again, it absolutely is, and I think I agree with the challenges that transportation provides. And so I'm not going to argue the number or some of the challenges.
Okay, all right, that's all I had, thank you. Thank you.
Good, thank you. We're not able to get that
Nope.
number, so we can vote on it at the next meeting? Okay. All right, seeing no further, do we need an executive
We do.
session tonight? And so the committee does have a need for executive session tonight to discuss contract negotiations and executive minutes. The school committee will only return to public session for the purpose of adjournment. Mr. Nelson?
Aye.
Mrs. Monaco?
Motion to go into executive session.
Oh, sorry.
Second.
Yeah. Thank you. Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Ms. Monaco? Aye. Mr. Nelson?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. We're now in executive session.